and welcome to Coffee and Discipleship Season 2. We are coming to the end of our season on self-defeating mindsets. We literally have just this episode and one more episode to go. This is episode 14. I think if my numbering is correct, but yeah, we have two more episodes to go, and I'm excited about where we have been. Many people have been reaching out, letting me know how the content has been helpful, and it's encouraging. It is encouraging to hear how so many of you have been impacted by the work that we are doing. I'm always appreciating the team. And listen, you do not want to miss season 3. We are hard at work on what is ahead. I'm excited about the content, not ready to spoil it yet. But I will say this, go ahead and get subscribed, like these videos, push them out to your family, to your friends, anybody who you feel would benefit from digging into the Word in a more laid back, smaller nuggets. We normally try to go no more than 25 minutes. We never go over 30 minutes. Not because we feel like, longer content is bad, but we want to make sure that you're able to, jump out on your lunch break or in the morning over coffee or whatever you're doing and really just get some word, get some transformation, if you will. So we're excited about where we're going to go, about what's happening. I will tell you this, we have a couple of guests lined up for season 3 already. One of those guests will be coming to us in July, and we're going to be able to offer those of you who are part of this community that we are building, we're going to be able to offer you some wonderful, wonderful things. So those of you who are praying for us, keep praying. Those of you who are sending those encouraging remarks, keep them coming. Those of you who are commenting, keep commenting. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can do this in this video. Let me know one thing that has been beneficial during season 2 as we've been dealing with self-defeating mindsets. Give me one thing that has been beneficial to you this season. Put it in the comment section below. I and the whole team would love to hear from you. Today, in the cup, I am back to Deeper Roots. I'm so excited. I've been, away. We've been traveling, but Deeper Roots, one of my favorite coffees today. So I was able to get my cup of coffee. It's been a good day as we are working through some of the best stuff that they have to offer. I will say that when the fall comes, Deeper Roots has some amazing blends, but don't sleep on like their summer punch and those type of things. I love coffee. For those of you who know me well, you know it to be true. All right, so self-defeating mindsets. We've been working through Moses, and we saw so much in Moses, so many things that possibly we've seen in ourselves as it pertains to Moses. But over the course of these last two episodes of this season, I want to kind of close up this particular subject with 3 kind of specific points, 2 of which I'll touch today, and then the 3rd of which we will close with next time we're together. And I'm going to give you all 3 now. We'll dig into the scripture a little bit, and then we'll move on. So number 1, we're dealing with self-defeating mindsets. And let me say this before I get to the points. Mindsets are something that we all have. And so we have to really be honest with ourselves and say, is the way I'm thinking beneficial or not? In other words, are my thoughts, and I challenge you to write this down. Listen to me. Are my thoughts assets or liabilities? I'll say it again, and I want you to write it down, and if you have to pause the video and just think about this for a second. This is actually a good journaling prompt for those of you who journal. Are my thoughts assets or liabilities? The things that I'm constantly thinking during the day, are they actually beneficial to my future or detrimental to my future? And before we get to the devil is coming against me, before we get to this person is my enemy or whatever, are my own thoughts assets or liabilities? Write that down. Utilize that as a journaling prompt, if you will, just to really take some time and go, wait a minute. Are the things coming from my own life furthering me or holding me back? When it comes to self-defeating mindsets, these are the three things that I want to culminate this season with. Number one, mindsets are built. Mindsets are built. Number two, mindsets, and this corresponds really to number one, mindsets can be renovated. Now that's good news right there. Because if they are built, and we're going to deal extensively with that today, if they are built, some of us have to come to grips with the fact that over time, over our life, however old you may be, you may have built the wrong mindset. But mindsets can be renovated. Just because you are wrong today doesn't mean you have to be wrong forever. Just because you're wrong today does not mean you have to be wrong forever. If you just did this journaling prompt that I told you a minute ago, and you determined that you have things coming from you that are liabilities, then instead of complaining about them, instead of feeling bad about them, instead of beating yourself up over that, renovate it. Do something about it. If there's anything that I hope that you guys have heard, even as I know I have this way of making us face some very uncomfortable truths, but I'm not asking you to face these uncomfortable truths so that you can simply feel bad about them. No. Conviction must lead to conversion. So if you just determine, okay, I have mindsets that are liabilities, don't just go, woe is me, renovate them. Do something about it. And we're going to talk about what that looks like today. So number one, again, mindsets are built. Number two, mindsets can be renovated. And for many of us, they must be renovated. Number three, mindsets impact worldview and behavior. Mindsets impact worldview and behavior. We'll deal with that the next time we're together in closing up this series. Mindsets impact worldview and behavior. As you think, so are you. All right? So when we talk about building these mindsets can be built. I want you to say that my choice of words is actually purposeful. I said mindsets are built. Not they might be, not they could be. Mindsets are built. It's a fact that every single day our mindset is under development. Every single day, your mindset is under development. And it's under development either consciously or unconsciously. We have conscious mindset develop, we have unconscious mindset develop, but you can't stop the development. Every input has input into your mindset. Everything that you ingest is actually developing how you think. So mindsets are built, and it's up to us to actually be intentional. Hear that word. It's up to us to be intentional in the development of the way we think. Remember, I said last time we were together, think on these things. That's intentionality. You can choose not to think on those things, good and lovely, as we read in Philippians. You can choose not to, but that doesn't mean that your mindset is not under development. If you choose not to be unintentional, then what you are doing is you are yielding to the subconscious or the unconscious development of your own mind. So if you choose not to be intentional with development, then what you're saying is my unintentional development is enough. And here's what I want to say to you about that. Unintentional development of your mind will very rarely be healthy. It will often be unhealthy. So it's up to us to make the building of our mind conscious and therefore purposeful, instead of unconscious and therefore haphazard. And so for those of you who are listening right now, I want you to write this down, and then we're going to read some scripture. Mindset is built by environment. Mindset is built by environment. Again, especially when we're talking about assets and liabilities. You've done your work here. At the onset of this, you said, okay, I have these things come up in my mind. For instance, I was talking to my wife the other day, and we were talking about some things that we think about. And you can choose to think about something over and over and over and over again. But what I'm asking you to do is really be honest with yourself. Are your reoccurring thoughts even beneficial? Are they even beneficial? If you're constantly thinking about the mistakes that you have made, even that thought can either be an asset or a liability. Let's think about that for a second. Let's say you made a mistake and you're constantly ruminating on the mistake. How are you looking at it? Are you looking at it from the perspective of, I can't believe I did that? Or are you looking at that from the perspective of, what are the lessons to be learned from the mistake that was made so that I will never make that mistake again? Notice how I'm looking at the same exact thing from two different vantage points and getting two different outcomes, right? I can look at the mistake from the vantage point of asset. All right, what do I learn from this, and therefore create a better tomorrow for myself? Or liability. I cannot believe I did this, therefore I will sulk in the mistake that I made and stay in the dark place of my bad decisions. Same problem, two different outlooks based upon conscious focus on how I'm going to think. Okay? And so we see this in one of my favorite passages in the book of Psalms. Psalms 1, I quote it like all the time. And those that go to, Marketplace or Tabernacle, I pastor both locations, honored to do so, they may know these verses. How blessed, this is Psalms 1 verse 1. How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers, but his delight, notice that, his delight, his intentional desire is in the law of the Lord. And in that, in his law, he meditates day and night. What's the outcome? He'll be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in its season. Its leaf does not wither, and whatever he does, he prospers. Now, I normally look at this in three areas that we can see: walk, stand, sit. So when it comes to our mindsets being built by our environment, I want you to evaluate. Remember, we've looked at our thoughts. Do I have thoughts that are assets, or do I have thoughts that are liabilities? How am I approaching the circumstance? Because the circumstances are not necessarily the first things that change, but how I think about them is. So what happened to you, but you make a conscious decision, or you have the ability to make a conscious decision to look at the same circumstance from a healthy perspective of development or an unhealthy perspective of detriment. But that is really based upon our environment. Who do I walk with? Who do I stand with? And who do I sit with? Again, it's conscious. Very few of us, as I was writing my notes about this, it's something because I always think about how somebody's going to try to talk me out of what I'm trying to teach and what I'm trying to communicate. But here's the reality. Very few of us, and what I wrote in my notes is very few of us are in an environment that we can't change. I'll actually lean into it even more. None of us are in an environment that we can't change. When I was writing this, I thought about individuals that may be incarcerated. They cannot change their environment, but they can change the environment of their mind. They may not be able to change their location, but they can change how they think. And so there is not one person listening to me today that is incapable of changing consciously their environmental variables. You can change where you walk, stand, and sit. Not one of us is unable to change that environmental variable. Even if you're saying, okay, I got to go back to this particular situation. Let's get even more practical. Let's say your job is a place of stress. Your job is a place where you have coworkers who are really giving you a hard time, or whatever the circumstance and situation is. And you're saying, but I got to go to work because if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat, right? I got to take care of my family. I got to do these things. However, you can change the mindset that you bring to that work. You may not be able to change the coworker. You may not be able to change whatever that particular circumstance is, but you can 100% consciously change the mindset in which you bring to that work. And to do so, you shift the environment that you can control. Because mindset is built first based upon environment. Jesus did this because Jesus had definite work to do, and he was working among people who didn't believe him. He was working among people who wanted to kill him. He was working among people who were against him. He was working against all types of threats. However, Jesus would go off alone and pray and come back to the work. He was making intentional decisions to bring his best, healthy self to the work that he was called to do, so that his mindset would be full of assets and not liabilities, okay? And many times, for instance, if you have to have a hard conversation with your spouse, the mindset that you bring to that conversation weighs heavy on how the conversation is going to be. Who have you been walking with? Who have you been standing with? And who have you been sitting with? Those are shaping the mind in which you bring to a conversation that you cannot avoid if you want to grow. But if you don't change the environment that you have control over, what you're going to do is you're going to bring a toxic mind to a necessary conversation and birth a toxic outcome. You will bring a toxic mind to a necessary conversation and birth a toxic outcome versus bringing a healthy mind to a necessary conversation and birthing a healthy outcome. The toxicity that you have to have the conversation in has nothing to do with what you bring to it. Has nothing to do with what you bring to it. All right? And so Jesus would go off, he would pray, and then he would come back to the work. We see this often. Go, Jesus, go, rest, work, pray, work. Because he was doing what he had to do intentionally in order to impact the work that he had to do. Think about your list that you created. Are your liabilities outweighing your assets in your mind, right? As a matter of fact, if you want to even hone into the work that I'm asking you to do in this episode, think about something in your life that you want to change, okay? Financial situation, and oftentimes I look at three categories if you've been listening during this season. Your health, your wealth, your relationships. Those are three categories that most people want to see improvement in. Your health, your wealth, your relationships. If you just take and you write health at the top of a sheet of paper, and I want you to write down all of your thoughts on there. And then as you get your thoughts about your health, you get your thoughts about your wealth, you get your thoughts about your relationships. How many of those thoughts are assets? How many of those thoughts are liabilities? What outweighs the other? You can intentionally change that if you will just shift the environment in which you are developing your own mind, right? You shift where you walk, where you stand, and where you sit. Watch this. In 2024, we have some issues that many people actually didn't have because of social media, right? Who you follow on these platforms are actually, they are environmental inputs. When you are following people who have consistent toxicity, consistent drama, you are actually choosing where you walk, stand, and sit, right? When you are spending more time mindlessly, and it's funny because that term is so true, mindlessly scrolling. When you're spending time mindlessly scrolling, you don't understand in the blink of an eye as you are scrolling down your feed. Listen to the words, guys. Your social media feed. It feeds you. You eat from it. So that social media feed. Why in the world is it that when it comes to these things, that is the only plate that you do not curate? I'll say it again. It's like the only plate that you don't curate. Self-defeating mindsets are a product of our environment, and yet on these platforms, many of us have a feed, and we haven't even bothered to curate what's on the plate. We just allow other people to put things on our plate, consume them without thought, and then wonder why our mindset is so toxic. Because we have not been intentional about where we walk, where we stand, and where we sit. So what happens is our liability column outweighs our asset column, and every circumstance that we get into is impacted by the health or lack thereof of our mind. And so what I'm asking you to do is do something about it. You have to be intentional. Intentional. For those of you who are listening to this episode, I want you to make a decision that you're going to be intentional about your inputs. There are even people who will say, well, I don't have a problem with my social media feed. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't impact me. If you feel that's true, and because here, listen to me. I recognize the power of these platforms. So I work to make sure that I'm curating what's on my plate. If you think that you're so strong and so mighty that it has no impact on you, then do a little experiment and stay off of it and delete all of the apps for the next 30 days. And if you have absolutely no withdrawal, then maybe it's not impacting you. But I guarantee many of you will be reaching for that phone because we have conditioned ourselves to, all right, this is what I do. This is what this device is for, right? And so our mindsets, and then we bring that to our interpersonal relationships. We bring that. So when we're trying to change our health, our wealth, our relationships, It's actually being fueled by our feed. And we're feeding more on the liabilities than the assets. And that's where our mind is messed up. All right? And so when we talk about where we walk is those who you follow. Where you stand are those who you interact with. And where you sit are those that you emulate. I'll do it again. So remember, I got to change where I walk, stand, sit. Where I walk, those who I follow. Because it is possible to be following someone. Look at, again, let's go back to social media. Look at your followers, those in which you are following, even passively. The people you follow passively, I would argue, are more dangerous than the ones you follow intentionally, because the passive people can slip something onto your plate that is poisonous because you're not paying attention. So those who you follow, those that you stand with, that's the ones you interact with. And then those that you sit with, those are the ones who you seek to emulate. Many of you have heroes, and you are following the lifestyle that they have curated for you, but you do not understand the state of the heart that you're emulating. We have to think about this because mindsets are built. And in building our mindsets, I want us to be intentional about this building. It is these three environmental variables that you have to change. Change where you walk, change where you stand, change where you sit. Be intentional about that. And I challenge you to be intentional and honest about, all right, where are my assets? Where are my liabilities in my mind? And let's get my asset column higher than my liabilities. And then when I approach circumstances, I'll approach them from a healthy way. There's my challenge for you. I hope that you got some homework out of today's lessons. May God bless you. May heaven smile upon you and give you peace. This is my prayer.